Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. Today we are going to take a look at all of the features and deliverables on the progress tracker that is starting work in August. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members. Thank you guys so much for the support. It is truly appreciated. So recently I released a video that spoke about all of the work coming to an end in the month of August according to the progress tracker. So following on from that, each month I'd like to put together a video that takes a look at all of the work that is kicking off each month to keep us all more informed as to what is going on in the background. Before we get to it, just like with the previous video talking about the work ending in August, just because something is on the progress tracker and has work beginning or is completing at a certain time doesn't mean it will necessarily be released in that quarter, the next quarter, or even in that year, as there could still be a lot more work required from other teams like the downstream teams, for example, with audio and visual effects, or even priorities can shift and things can get pushed back until needed. It is, however, a good guide to see what could potentially come to the PU when, but at the very least it shows what work is scheduled to be done at what time of the year. So with that said, let us take a look at all of the deliverables and features that have work beginning in August. Let's start off with one of the more exciting deliverables. It is the creature rigging pipeline. Now this is from the character animation team and is basically creating an animation rig to allow the teams to get the various creatures moving and animating as intended. Now whether this is applicable to all creatures or a more specific type of creature, I don't know. But the work on this lasts 2 weeks, which looks like it should be kicking off now and coming to a close early next month. What is even more interesting is that the Boreal Stalker creature, or the Microtech Bear as you may know it, finished its work in July. So although nothing is guaranteed here, we could be seeing the Microtech Bear planetside once the navigation mesh is complete, which personally both excites me and scares the crap out of me. As mentioned earlier, we don't have the downstream teams who would create the audio and other aspects of this creature on the progress tracker yet, so I expect there is still quite a bit of work left to do before we see any of these creatures. So continuing with the AI theme, we have AI Leisure and Medical. For the Leisure deliverable, this is a segment of the new civilian behavior system controlling how the AI behave when they have some free time. So we may see them relaxing, having fun, using things such as exercise equipment, jogging, TVs and seats and benches, and their mobiGlas. Now the work on this lasts 6 weeks, which begun earlier this month and finishes mid-September. For the AI Medical deliverable, this is implementing a variety of medical behaviors like the patients arriving, checking themselves in, waiting to be seen, and then being called to a room for a diagnosis. We will also see the doctors and nurses washing their hands, checking medical stock, dispensing medicine, and some patients will be asleep in beds. I expect this will be required for Alpha 315 and the hospitals that are coming in with that patch, as the work on this kicked off earlier this month and is finishing towards the end of September. And following on from that, we have the Hospital Medical Concept Kit, which I believe I did mention in the video looking at work coming to an end in August, and this is because the work on this was only 2 weeks in duration and looks to be almost completed now. But this is concepting a variety of hospital-themed NPCs planned alongside the release of hospitals as a landing zone element. So next up, we have the AI navigation links, ladders, and ledge grab. Now this is basically more functionality for the nav mesh to allow the navigation system to offer potential connections for AI, allowing them to use ladders and ledges to move around. This has 3 weeks work, which looks as though it has already been done within the month of August, so it's looking like the nav mesh is already receiving improvements. I will be very happy watching an NPC making their way across the planet's surface, and I don't think we're going to be waiting too long to see that. Frontier clothing is next, and as you can imagine, this is generating concepts for the Frontier style clothing to be worn by players and NPCs. Now I think this is likely for Pyro, having its own style much like what we have seen for all the other major landing zones within Stanton, and the work on this kicked off midway through this month and will finish towards the end of September. So one of the most exciting deliverables that has recently started its work is the long distance probing. Now this has 33 weeks work, which takes it all the way up to the end of March, so there will be quite a wait for it, but what is exciting about this is long distance probing is the development of the exploration mechanic and game loop. Now it says this feature will allow for players to launch quantum traveling probes that can detect signatures at extreme ranges far beyond the reach of ship scanners. The signatures can ultimately be used to identify points of interest and plan quantum travel. So very happy to see that this has now begun active development, and I expect over the course of its development we will check in to see how it's coming along on Inside Star Citizen, but as I say, this is the starting point for the exploration career. Now loot generation tier 1 is next. We are getting loot generation tier 0 for Alpha 3.15, which is the initial implementation of this system. Tier 1 is further refining and improving the system, which only says to allow players to access and break into containers. So some form of lock breaking style addition perhaps, but I would expect the functionality will increase as well, and the containers may hold items beyond the initial weapons and armors, maybe finding these containers in other locations beyond derelict spaceships. Now the work on loot generation tier 1 kicked off earlier this month and will come to a close mid to late January next year, so there's a bit of a wait on that one, but at least we're getting tier 0 in the next patch. Now the next feature we have starting work in August is the Male Specialist Heavy RRS armor. Now RRS stands for Rusimov Rehabilitation Systems, which is an in-game brand, and the light armor version of this is apparently marked as a Shuban Interstellar security uniform in the game's item ID. The heavy armor set is what we saw on Inside Star Citizen, which they did mention is the more armored of the RRS set, but still has a lot of wrapped cloth and is very tactical. It appears that these armors do have armor plating, so they could be combat specific, but the light armor variant that has already been done according to the progress tracker is more of a stealth specialization armor set. Whether the heavy variant can play a similar role is yet to be known, but the work on the heavy armor is set to begin any day now and will conclude towards the end of September. Now the next feature is Player Interaction Experience Tier 1, Lockers and Inventory. Tier 0 of the Player Interaction Experience is already well underway and actually about halfway through its 65 weeks work. Tier 0 is intended to be a holistic array of complementary features and systems relating to the player, items and environment statuses. For Tier 1, this will be the introduction of a consistent way to store clothing, armors and items in a physicalized state, including a tactile method of storing items on shelves and attachment services. Now, as you can imagine, this is building upon the personal inventory that we are getting in Alpha 3.15 to include lockers. Alpha 3.15 is personal inventory using only the UI, and this is going to allow CIG to then physicalize everything so that we are physically interacting and moving and placing these items where we want them. Tier 1 of this system has 33 weeks work, which looks to be kicking off now until early to mid-April next year. Next up, we have proximity mines. These are explosives that have a defined area trigger zone that detonates when someone or something enters that zone. Quite a self-explanatory feature, and with 7 weeks work, which kicked off mid-August, the work will finish at the end of September. Now, we have seen the laser trip mines recently appear on the end of year patch. I do wonder if these proximity mines will join them, but at this time they are just on the progress tracker. The next feature kicking off this month is Spectrum Party Sync. This is creating the ability to create a new party or view your current party in Spectrum. This is part of CIG's intention to sync up the game and Spectrum, so even if you are not physically in the game, you can still chat to those who are in game via Spectrum. The Party Sync functionality has 15 weeks work starting now and finishing around early December. Now, this next feature appeared on the roadmap quite a while ago, but was promptly removed. It is Stair Locomotion Tier 1. Have you ever found yourself in Star Citizen sloppily moving up or down the stairs? Well, this feature is set to fix that. It will procedurally align the character's feet to hit each stair correctly, regardless of whether they are walking, running, or sprinting. Now, this is something that, although it's very small and not 100% necessary, will make a huge difference to my immersion personally. So I was very glad to see it appear on the progress tracker when it did, and it does have 19 weeks work, which begun right at the beginning of this month and will finish around early December. Again, not 100% necessary for the game, but as always with Star Citizen, it is the small details that do make the biggest differences. So these next two are Squadron 42 specific. The first one is the female player head, which is completing a modelling and texture pass for the female player's head, and once complete will be sent to Tech Animation for a rigging update. There is only 8 weeks work on this, which is pretty much halfway through, finishing towards the end of September. And for the second Squadron 42 specific deliverable, it is called Mop and Bucket. This is enabling support for AI janitors to use multiple tools in either hand. So although maybe not 100% specific to mops and buckets, it is probably more applicable to multiple different types of usables. And again, not a huge feature, but one that will bring a little bit more life to the characters found within the Squadron 42 campaign. I do hope though that the mop and bucket feature comes over to the PU as well, as it will be a great punishment for org members. So for the last set of deliverables, I'll briefly run through them, kicking off with the Achievement Service. This is responsible for the lifecycle and management of game achievements. No idea what these achievements will be or how they will be displayed, but it is a PU-specific feature that has 27 weeks work that begun mid-August and completes around mid-February. Maya Live Link is the next deliverable, which is more of a dev quality of life improvement, and I think only now possible since Amazon Lumberyard went to open source. It basically establishes a link between Maya, which is the modeling software CIG uses, and the engine software editor, allowing more of a what you see is what you get preview quality. Now this will likely speed up workflow greatly for the team without the constant back and forth. And this has 5 weeks work, which is kicking off any day now and will be done hopefully at the end of September. Next, we have the login flow, which is improving the login process for more stability and easier analysis of errors, as well as improvements to queue that will help streamline the login process, particularly in instances of high concurrency. So I'm not entirely certain what this does, but anything to improve logging in will be welcomed if that is where it helps. It has 17 weeks work, which begun mid-August and will finish early December. Dedicated Game Server Mesh Node is the next feature, which implements multiple dedicated game servers and clients connected to the same instance of the hybrid server. This allows dedicated game servers to exchange entities and authority over them. So I think this is handling the movement of items in-game from one instance to another, ensuring that they are where they need to be, but I am not 100% certain on this, as technical stuff mostly goes over my head. The work on the dedicated game server mesh node lasts 8 weeks and is already well underway, completing around late September. The next deliverable is called Freeform Variable API. Now this says it is the Blackboard service for game code systems to write generic persistent variables. So I'm not entirely sure what this is, but I'm hoping that someone in the comments can explain this one. This has only 5 weeks work, which comes to a close at the beginning of September. Now for the last 4 deliverables, these are all unannounced features. The first one is from the location content team, which lasts 29 weeks, just starting around now, so it won't be finished until mid-March next year, and it just says unannounced content, but we know it will be location based. We have another unannounced feature that has 5 teams working on it, who are the US Vehicle Content Team, the Vehicle Experience Team, Vehicle Feature Team, EU Sandbox Team 1, and Weapon Concept Team. Now, this has 11 weeks work that concludes early October. No idea what this could be. Could it be ship refining if I was just to pull an idea completely out of my ass? That's where I would go. The next one is Unannounced Tech. Now this is being developed by the Game Services team, but this lasts 44 weeks until late June next year, so no idea what this tech could be, but it's going to take a while. And the final unannounced deliverable is a vehicle that has 34 weeks work that started at the beginning of August and will last all the way up until late March next year. Your guess on this one is as good as mine, so do drop them in the comments. So, there is a huge amount of content that is kicking off this month. For me, knowing that long distance probing, creature rigging, the next tier of loot generation and the player interaction experience, and of course any work going on for persistence and server meshing is all well underway is great news. And as I said earlier, each month I will put these videos together, so hopefully we can all follow along with what work is finishing but also starting each month, as I think a lot of this stuff gets forgotten. But with that said, if you do enjoy my content, please consider subscribing. We are almost at 40,000 subscribers, and I can see that almost 49% of my viewers are not subscribed. So if you wouldn't mind doing me a big favor and hitting that subscribe button, I would really appreciate it. Also, if you would like to hang out with me and my awesome Twitch community, we always have a great time talking about Star Citizen. You are all more than welcome, regardless of whether you are an old or new backer. The link is in the description. Hit that thumbs up if you don't mind, it does the channel a big favour, and if you want to be notified when my videos go live, just tick that little notification bell. Again, massive thank you to my patrons and channel members. Cannot do this without you guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.